What is good, everybody, man? Welcome into the Bluebloods official podcast of FCS Football Central on SI. Your host, Zach McKinnell, joined by my co-host, Coach Leroy Frederick. As always, man, Coach, how we feeling, man? We're here. Celebration Bowl weekend, FCS playoff, quarterfinals, man. We only got like one more full week, I guess, this weekend and next week of football, and then it's a natty, and that's it. It's a wrap
Yep.
on the season, man.
Man, the thing came and went, man. So really excited about the finish down the stretch for the FCS. Starting with the Celebration Bowl into the playoffs. Really excited about that. Again, it came and it went. So we got to savor the rest of this as if it's our last meal for a long time.
Gosh, man, I'm headed to Atlanta when we finish up the show. I still got to pack, man. I'll always wait till the last minute packing.
I
Still got to
like it.
pack, and then I'm hitting the road. So I'll be super late tonight getting in. Radio Road tomorrow in Atlanta. Then obviously the game on Saturday, and man, Coach FCS in prime time this week. We got Montana State, Idaho on ESPN on Friday night. ABC at 11 a.m. Jackson, South Carolina State for the Celebration Bowl at the same time on ESPN, South Dakota State Incarnate Word. And then right after the Celebration Bowl, Coach, we go North Dakota State Mercer on ABC at 2:30. And of course, it's stupid, the best game of the weekend in South Dakota, UC Davis on ESPN Plus. They messed that one up. But man, what a weekend. It's really cool, Coach, that the FCS gets to be kind of in prime time this week. And I'm just pumped that I think we're going to have a bunch of good games, man. I really do. And I think this one that we're going to talk about today, the Celebration Bowl, is going to be the headliner. Coach, we talked last week, SWAC championship. I think it kind of went how we both thought.
Yeah.
Obviously, at halftime, a little closer than expected, but Jackson just runs away with it in the second half, and it was very clear in that second half that Jackson was significantly better in multiple key areas. They were able to wear down Southern. Southern made some really, really bad mistakes, not able to run the football super effectively in the second half. Coach, when you look at this matchup, though, I think South Carolina State is a much more formidable opponent for Jackson than Southern was, and that's no offense to the Jaguars and what Coach Terrence Graves built over there. But man, one of the most electric offenses in the country with Eric Phoenix and that wide receiving core. You got Jackson with Irv Mulligan and this rushing attack, Coach. I think this game plays into each team's strengths a little bit. Jackson's secondary has been really, really good at limiting the pass, especially the explosive plays in the passing attack. And South Carolina State's done a pretty good job against the run. So strength versus strength this weekend, Coach. Man, your initial thoughts on this matchup here?
Man, you hit it on the head there. One team does something really well, the other team takes that away. So it's going to be, I think, a game of who can impose their will the quickest and sustain it. Again, before I dive into it, I think you hit it right there, man. It's a clash of it's really a good matchup just to see which team will overtake the other one within their strongholds.
Yeah. Man, shout out to everyone in the chat. Paris, Mr. Campbell, man, shout out to Miss Veronica, man. My dad's doing good. He's actually kicking it outside where I'm recording right now. Probably watching this on his phone, knowing him. So appreciate you checking in on that. Coach, let me ask you this: the big storyline, and I think we talked a little bit beforehand. The word is Jacoby Morgan is getting the start. I want your opinion as a guy who has coached in this game, who has coached around the SWAC for a long time. For you, was there any question if Jacobian was healthy? Was it just an obvious choice for Jackson to roll with Morgan, or do you give the hot-handed Zai McDonald the chance to start this game at quarterback if everything's equal and they're both healthy?
Absolutely not. You got to go with what brought you this far, who brought you to the dance. I think you would have to go with that guy that started the majority of your games and has that experience. If he's 100%, I think you still got to do that even if he's in the 80 percentile, just because. Now, when you get to the 60, 50 range, if that's the case, then okay, yeah, maybe you go ahead and you do that. But I still think he's got to step out there for you first, and then you can make the determination on where you want to go. But that's your leader. That's the guy that's brought you to the dance. That's brought you to the celebration. He's gotta step out there.
Miss Veronica said y'all finally agree on something. Not much, but listen. Okay, so I've changed my opinion throughout the week. Kind of I would say just reevaluating, watching some film. Because, Coach, I do think the interesting option would be The South Carolina State defense is going to attack similarly to how Southern tried to do, right? They're gonna utilize their edge rushers, they're gonna trust their secondary, and they're gonna just try to get to the quarterback and generate negative plays, and they're gonna try to stop the run. I do wonder though if Zai's athleticism makes him a better fit and they can utilize a similar game plan. And then also this coach, South Carolina State's been sitting around watching film for 3 weeks. Do you throw a curveball at them and throw 3 out there? And
No,
just
that's a
see
curveball to you. I think
I
that's a
agree.
curveball to you. And I wasn't going to touch on it unless you touched on it. So now that you touched on it, I can
Yeah,
touch
let's
on it.
do it.
The time differential. That's always been a big deal for this game. But I think even more so now, that's a real deal because you got to think less than a week ago, Jackson played in a championship game. Um, and they had to fight a little harder than they may have wanted to get that space to where they could start pulling those guys toward the end of the game. But how much work were they able to put in on South Carolina State while still trying to win a championship to even get to South Carolina State? Now, the other side of that is how engaged has South Carolina State been, because they've been off a long time. And it's been a long season, even though it went by quick. It's been a long season. Were they able to keep those kids mentally locked in to the game plan? Not up until this week. The other 2 weeks, were they able to keep them locked in, or was it just one of those situations where those kids were showing up just to get through, just to get by? Were they really paying attention to detail? Were they really paying attention to the coverages, the routes that Jackson's run? The tips in interview, that you get from that tackle, man. When he sets like this, it's a 95% chance they're running the ball. Were they really locked into that those other 2 weeks and not just this past week, or were they just getting by? So I think it evens out. And then the other part of that also be, and you tell me if I'm wrong, mentally, which team is in shape for this battle, because they've been on the different sides of it. One's been off, rested. One's been playing and still in rhythm. But mentally, who shows up there and ready to play ball?
And I think there's interesting conversation, and I talked about this on another show. Yes, obviously, listen, we're not going to act like 3 weeks off doesn't make any difference, because it does, especially when Eric Phoenix was banged up, man. 3 weeks to get your quarterback healthy for this game is huge, right, coach? Just in terms of injuries.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think, too, if you ask Chinnis Berry and the group, if they were healthy, right, let's take injuries out of this conversation for a second. I think South Carolina State would have loved for this game to be played 3 weeks ago. With the momentum that they had, with how they
Yeah,
were playing,
still in
I
rhythm.
I think, to me, I think if you ask TC and Chinnis Berry, they would have much rather played this game the week of the Bayou Classic with how good both teams were playing. Coach Jackson coming off a big win on the reservation, South Carolina State coming off of multiple big wins, Norfolk and played Central late in the year. Jackson gets by Alabama State. I think both of these teams, with all the momentum they were building, would have loved to just build on that momentum right now. Obviously, injuries play a part, so you would love to get rest and get Eric Phoenix 100%. But and South Carolina State was so hot at the end of the year, coach. Were they able to transfer that momentum from the end of November to
Yeah.
December, to early December? That's my question, because I do think there is something to be said that teams just get hot. And
Oh,
South
ain't no
Carolina
doubt.
State was one of the hottest teams in the country. Did those 3 weeks help them get healthy, but did it cool them down a bit?
Ain't no doubt. And I'll use this case in point, and some people may get upset, but a few years ago, the Richardson kid, if the game is played a week or 2 weeks right after, he doesn't make that game for NCCU because he has to have that surgery. So that gave him a chance to get rested, get healed up, and get ready to play for that game. So I said that to say, same scenario for Phoenix right now. You know what I mean? Now, like you said, were they creative enough in practice to keep the momentum, to keep the kids hungry, to keep them going up to this point? Or was it just a drag? That's my thing. What did you do in those 2 weeks prior to that game week to keep your kids locked in and focused?
That's a big thing. Coach, looking at these two teams, for you, what is the matchup to watch? You could pick any side of the ball, either team. Just for you, if you had to pick the most important matchup that's going to determine this weekend's game, what would it be for you?
For me, it's the guy that's thrown for 2,400 yards and has 20 TDs. You know, can he bounce back after, like you said, being banged up, being off? Can he bounce back and get back in rhythm? Not just throwing, but pulling it down, getting a timely 5 yards here, timely 6 yards here, staying ahead of the chains. So for me, him versus Quinn's defense, can he keep his team ahead of the chains, or can Quinn get them behind the chains? And then that way they can kind of start heating them up, put the pressure on. When you start getting into second and 13s, third and nines, those are tough situations to overcome, to continue to overcome. So can Phoenix keep his team ahead of the chains, and can Quinn keep them behind the chains? I think will be the matchup I'm most looking forward to. Can Seven, hey, came from the D2 ranks, came up Division One, started out slow, went back and watched film from that first game when we first saw him up until that last one, and the kid did nothing but continue to improve. He caught up with the speed. Now, because those guys up top, you know, JSU, they play at a different speed. So will he be able to catch that soon enough to keep them ahead of the chains and to keep them close on the scoreboard?
Yeah, listen, okay, defense wins championships, coach, but you can't regardless, listen, your defense has to be elite of the elite to win without a quarterback. And
Yes.
like you have to have a I'm just trying to think. I mean,
2,000 Ravens. Just
yeah.
don't wreck.
I
Just
I, I
keep it
was
in the
trying
middle of the road.
I was trying to think of a team like has there been a team to win the Celebration Bowl without like one of the better quarterbacks in HBCU football?
We lost in 18 to A&T, who's
But A and
starting
T had that
quarterback.
A and
Well,
T
their
had
starting
those running
quarterback,
back.
remember, their starting quarterback had gotten in a car accident. The kid
That's
that beat
right.
us was the backup. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, he could play, but he was the backup.
Yeah.
So I remember that because I lived that one. But as far as that, I mean, I'm kind of like
Yeah.
you. I don't, because there's usually a drastic drop off. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Uh, if and there's no slack to any of those guys behind the JSU quarterback, but the kid that comes in behind Morgan is not Morgan. There's a
Yeah.
reason he's behind Morgan, if that
That's
makes
true.
sense.
That's why Morgan started 10 games this year.
Yes.
And also too, when Morgan went out earlier this year, it wasn't 3 that got put in. It was 6. And so that also plays a role.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, also too, yeah, Corey Fields might not have been an elite quarterback to win it, but South Carolina State, led by their defense, obviously. I mean, they just shut down Shador in that offense that game, and it was unbelievable. Coach, I think there's 2 matchups to me that really stick out. One
But Corey
is
Fields had one factor
yeah.
that he could lean on whenever he
Oh, yeah,
needed
because
to.
Corey Fields played well that game. That's the thing is, like and then also too, Shaq Davis was
That was the one
murdering
factor he could
people.
lean on. Just
Yeah, just
throw it his way, and he was making play. He was playing out his mind. I remember that.
Buddy Pugh went into halftime, and on the whiteboard, he just wrote "throw it to one." There were no plays, there were no schemes. It was like throw it to number one in one-on-one coverage, and that was the game plan. They had
When
no
it's doubt
answer.
or no doubt, throw it to one.
Yeah, no answer for number one on the outside. Coach, I really do think, and I know it's repetitive, but it's the trenches for me, and specifically the trenches in terms of Jackson's offensive line against South Carolina State's defensive line. Because, Coach, I look at last week's game. Early in that game, Jackson's offensive line really struggled to protect the quarterback.
Right.
That off the edges, I mean, listen, and also too, so Jackson coach missing their center. They had to move Evan Henry from guard to center. They moved Kirk Ford from tackle to guard. They bring in Cam James on the other side across from Quay Davis. And coach, they just that the speed rush is their problem. They were getting murdered off the edge in that game. And I don't think the interior guys were causing a lot of havoc, coach. That interior line, Evan Henry, Kirk Ford, they played well. But off the edge, they were just giving up way too much. And then Jacoby and two, I think you saw this, coach, when you put in 3, he was hesitant to step up in the pocket, and I think he could have avoided some of those sacks by stepping up in the pocket rather than rolling and drifting out. Because you know this, if you got a speed rusher off the edge, the last thing you want the quarterback to do is to roll out in that direction.
Yeah,
Because
not gonna win.
he's going to disengage and he's going to chase down your quarterback, and or he's going to roll right into the pressure. And I do wonder how aggressive South Carolina State's going to be with their defense, because coach, the thing that separates South Carolina State from Southern is Southern didn't have an elite linebacking core. They had good linebackers, but they don't have anybody like 11 and Aaron Smith, who's going to the East-West Shrine Bowl, true NFL prospect. He's got size, speed, athleticism. He's got it all. If 11 can contain the quarterback stepping up through the pocket in the scramble, I think they're going to be able to get those edge rushers, pin their ears back, come after the quarterback. But here's the trick, coach. Can South Carolina State stop the run enough to force Jackson into that situation? Because, coach, you know this. Every coach in the SWAC knows this. If Jackson doesn't have to throw the ball, they're not going to. You know what they're going to do? They're going to put number 5 in the backfield. And, coach, what did we say the strategy was last week? We're going to run Irv to the right, Irv to the left, and then we're going to Irv up the middle. And then we're gonna shake the hat up and draw the 3 plays out of the hat again in that order. It's that simple. And so I think if you're South Carolina State, you have to force Jackson to beat you through the air. Coach, at the end of the day, if they're holding up the trophy because Jacoby and Morgan, whoever at quarterback, threw for 304 touchdowns,
I can listen.
Round of applause. We'll give it to you at the press conference. I'll say how great Jacoby and Morgan and whoever was if I'm Chennis Berry. The number one thing you cannot do is have 5 go for 150 and 2 tubs.
No, and control the clock.
Yeah. Oh, if Jackson wins the time of possession, I think this thing gets out of hand.
Yeah, can't do it. And, you know, that was my Lee Corso moment. Not so fast, my friend. They've got to basically say that our guys on the edges in the back end are going to live by themselves, and we're going to control this box with this 8-man. And I think that's got to be the mindset. But, you know, again, watching South Carolina State, knowing O'Daffer and knowing Styles and that defensive staff, they'll probably play a couple series of just kind of base just to see what it is. You know what I mean? And then whoever makes the adjustment and whoever kids can pick up that adjustment and execute it, I think will, at the end of the day, be standing on that stage with the confetti. But if I'm O'Daffer, I'm saying, hey, I'm not going to let 5 just paper cut me to death. You know, you're going to have to do something else. And like you said, at the end of the day, if whoever plays quarterback for you is thrown for 320 and 4 touchdowns, hey, man, hats off to you. You deserve it.
There's nothing we could do, right? We took away your best player.
35 minutes of possession time and 200 yards on the ground. We can't do it.
No, like that's the key, right? And I think South Carolina State's linebackers and their edges are solid. I just, like, when I look at the defensive tackles, they're good, coach. But can one of them take over the game?
Right.
Because Jackson's going to take advantage of it. If you aren't getting just penetration from your defensive tackles or anything like that, they're going to just murder you up front. And all 5 needs is a crease, coach, because he can make a guy miss in the second level.
That's it.
We've seen it too many times. And also, too, I think the other matchup, and coach, I think this is listen, college football is great with matchups when you have a mismatch, right, and a team's able to take advantage of it. The best matchups are strength versus strength. And I think that's what you're getting in South Carolina State's wide receivers versus Jackson's DBs.
Oh, that was my next stat.
Yes, I'll let you take it.
That's going to be the fun part of it because, you know, my background back there on the backside of it is, you know, you got 3 receivers for South Carolina State, one with almost 900 yards, the other with 700 plus, and the other one with almost 600 yards. You know, those are 3 guys that are getting it done. When you're talking 0, 6, and 1, those guys are getting it done on the outside for Phoenix. So, you know, the fun matchup is going to be who can control the front and give their quarterback time when need be, and who's going to have the matchup. You know, I don't want to say that I think that matchup. I'm going to say it. That matchup, if South Carolina State has time to throw the ball, favors them. just because I don't think the 4-5 in the back end for Jackson will be able to hold up, because those three kids are very, very dangerous and they're interchangeable. So now, if you want to put Rob in the slot versus 0, that's fine. We'll let you have that. Now, who's going to handle 1 and 6 on the outside?
Yeah.
You're going to put Rob on the outside? Okay. Who's going to handle 0 on the inside, or wherever we decide to put the matchup? So that's going to be really intriguing. And if I had to give it a nod, I got to give the nod to that receiving core versus that secondary, if that makes sense. But yeah, that's one of my intriguing things. If they can protect, how that's going to go.
Yeah, and I think for me, the best part of Jackson's pass defense is the pass rush.
Oh yeah, because you got to get it out your hand.
They are unbelievable.
They're coming. Listen, they're not letting you sit back there.
Because Coach, this is the thing is, there's been a narrative out here that Jackson's weak in the secondary, and I don't think that's true. I'm not going to say that. Like Jackson had, Coach, the names speak for themselves. Asayas Guthrie, Rob McDaniel, K1 now or K5 Keverick.
I love Asayas. I recruited him. I tried to get him here. Still have a contact. Still talk to him. But I'm taking 0 versus him 5 days out of. I mean,
which one?
Every other week.
0 against who?
Guthrie. If I can get that matchup.
Oh well, Guthrie's not going to be on one-on-one covers. Guthrie's going to play the safety spot.
Now they do put situations where if you look, and I wish we had the telestrator where he's capped and that nickel's coming. Now he's one-on-one with that slot guy. If they can game plan it and get that done to where they can put pressure on those safeties in the pass game, I take those receivers every day, all day.
Listen, he played for you, and obviously, he's graduated, so you can say his name because there's no tampering here. He's done after this year. McDaniel, he's so versatile. In my opinion, he can play corner, right, Coach? He can play nickel. He can play safety. He can play everywhere. And he's been balling at corner as well. I have him somewhere around 0 every play.
Yeah, and if that's the matchup, I'm good with that. Because now I'm telling Eric, okay, unless that's just, he falls down and we got that kind of ball, then we go with it. If not, I'm going to see with this corner, because you got to remember, and please, Chad, I'm not hating. It doesn't matter. I'm saying from a coach standpoint, from a receiver standpoint, from a DB coach standpoint, you've got bigger receivers versus 5'10", 5'11" guys out there. Rob McDaniels is a 6'2", 6'3" guy.
He's
now, okay, when in doubt, Phoenix, just put it close. We've seen this happen when we talked about the last time these teams matched up with Coach Pugh. Yeah. Hey, man, just throw it to one. One's got a catch radius that's freaking crazy. You know what I mean? Just get it close to him. So Rob McDaniels cancels out 0, fine. Let's see if these other guys can earn it and make them have to earn it. Don't shy away from it, if that makes sense.
No, and the good thing is, I think Carter brings a different type of game. Like Carter's that small kind of slot guy, like he's a speedster. So maybe you have somebody that match up on him. But I think Justin Smith Brown's probably their biggest guy on the outside 6. But also too, let's not forget, and this is something I like because Jackson's so talented at tight end, and I wish they schemed their tight ends more into the game plan. 5 is a problem for South Carolina State as well. Keyshawn Toney at tight end, transfer from Chattanooga.
Yep.
He's gonna be the one that I'm interested in. I do think they're gonna scheme some matchups where he does get matched up with Asayas, and you got Asayas guarding Toney, and he's not afraid to throw it to him. That's a guy who's 6'3", 6'4", 255 on the outside. In one-on-one situations, he's a problem. But I will say this: Jackson's secondary coach has not allowed 200 yards passing since FAMU on October 19th.
Again,
unbelievable.
Like you said, that pass rush, that blitz they hit you with continuously, it makes you get that thing out your hand, and you think you've got a small window to fit that thing in there, and you don't, or you're getting rid of it before he gets out of the break, a little earlier than you want to. And that's the thing that I love about Quinn. Quinn is going to pressure you from the time they get in the stadium to the time they leave. And that, to me, makes their defense as a whole really good, really good.
Quinn has like, I don't know if there's I wish, I don't some conferences have it, others don't. If there was a coordinator of the year award, I think Quinn probably gets it this year for the SWAC with what he's
I'm with
done with that defense. I mean, coach, the other thing I do like about Quinn is he's so creative too with how he brings pressure sometimes because he'll bring everybody up sometimes, but like you don't know who's coming. And I think that speaks to Jackson's recruiting and personnel because coach, we've seen some of those edge rushers be able to play in space. And so when you have an edge rusher that can drop in space, it allows you to be much more aggressive with your linebackers because you can trust your guy to go back and play in space if you got to drop him into coverage.
Yep, it puts your whole blitz package. It takes it to a whole nother level, and that's one of those things that, and they're so long.
Oh yeah.
So that makes those windows that might look like this, go to here now. So that's one of those things where I think he's done really good with what he has, and he's made up for that. Now I will go back to a game you just said. Now, FAM, when they did have time, was able to find people in that secondary. If we're being honest,
Yeah.
he was able to find people in the secondary. He was able to hit big plays in the pass game. If South Carolina State can find a way to do that when they need to do it the most, I'm not saying they control it, but if they get in a situation where it's a tight game and they need to make a play, if they can hold up in that pass rush game, he's got people he can find down the field. And I think, that lends to what they do best.
Yeah, and I know people, it might seem like we're saying Jackson secondary can be had, but coach, I don't care if it's the best secondary in the NFL. If you aren't getting pressure, your DBs can't cover forever, and
No,
it's the
that's like
same for
7-on-7.
It's the same for South Carolina State. If you allow Jacobian to sit in the pocket forever, Jackson's going to find somebody eventually, whether it's a dump down, whether it's a check. So I think that's what, and then also too, coach. I just got to say, I think the biggest difference between these two teams is the defensive tackle spot. Like I said earlier, I think South Carolina State has some guys there, but good Lord, man. I mean, I don't know if there's anyone in HBCU football that has two guys like 4-0 on the interior because they
Oh yeah,
wrecked the
those guys
game
are tough
last
to
week.
move. They're tough to move, man. They anchor in, and that's what it is.
Yeah,
That's just what
you
it
got to
is.
stop them because, coach, the worst thing you can do, and as an offensive lineman, man, you would get so pissed at tackle. You lock up your side, you look, and the D tackle's in the backfield getting pressure up the middle, and it collapses from there. But, coach, if you can generate pressure from the A gap,
Oh, you're winning, especially with the
God,
guys
man.
they have on the edge, because you can't step up, you can't get outside. I mean, where are you going at this point?
And their linebackers are so much better at kind of filtering through the mess and getting to the ball. Last year, I think that's where Jackson
Rangy.
really struggled. The linebackers were super aggressive. Like when Jackson last year with the linebacker core they had, if they brought them on blitzes and they were untouched, they were unbelievable. But once things got murky in the middle, they really struggled processing through the information and being in the right spot. And I think that's one of the bigger improvements. And that speaks to Reed Pulliam's development, Ashton Taylor, some of these guys that you see on that defense. Coach, when you look at special teams, man, it played a big part in the last Celebration Bowl between these two teams. That big fake punt. I mean, the punter for South Carolina State was balling. But, man, this year, Jackson has one of the best punters in the nation in Matt Knoll. They have that bad man number 0 who Travis Terrell can take it to the house on any given play. For you, do you feel like Jackson has a significant special teams advantage on this one?
I do, but I also think that South Carolina State can't let that dictate what they do. I think we
That's
talked
fair.
about it on the championship show. You got to kick it. You can't continuously give them the short field because you don't want to kick it to him. In my opinion, you've got to test it. You've got to throw it out there, and you have 3 weeks of rest. You have 3 weeks to fix and put your best out there because this is the last game. There's no other game after this. So if your best 11 for your kickoff team is half of your starting defense and half your starting offense, you got to put them out there and let it go and try to let the game play out as a game, 100 yards, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think Southern did a pretty good job last week neutralizing Terrell.
They did. They did. They did.
So it's there. Let me ask you this, because the other thing that I think has defined Jackson this year is second half adjustments. Man, they are just they're different. I think it was the stat is they've allowed like 13 points in the past like 8 or 9 games in the second half. And Quinn's done such a good job defensively, he's really scheming it up in the second half. To me, coach, South Carolina State's key, the number one key for the game is start fast. South Carolina State has to go into halftime with a lead. I think just because you do know that if Jackson goes into halftime with the lead, they're so good in the second half that it's going to be tough to get there. For you, do you think do you think South Carolina State can match that, or do you think Jackson's just that good at making adjustments this year?
But if you go back and you look at a few of those games for South Carolina State down the end, what is that,
That's
total yards?
No, that's points. Jackson's outscored their opponents 134 to 13 in the second half.
That's big time.
That is insane.
That's big time. But and that goes to the strength and conditioning department as well. That's saying they're not getting tired. That's saying they're getting stronger as the game goes. So I mean, that's just an all around big time stat. But I think South Carolina State has made adjustments as well in some of their games. But at this point in this juncture, there's only so many adjustments that you have left to make. Now I think you got to be able to go out there, execute it, like you said, go into halftime up or still attached, and make it a game in the fourth quarter if you're South Carolina State. If you go in the half down 14, you're going to need a whole lot of crazy stuff to help you make up that difference. Jackson turns it over, pick six, that type thing. But to go in knowing how they come out in the second half down by more than a score, it's going to be tough.
Yeah. The other thing too, red zone offense has been such a big thing. I mean, South Carolina State 39 of 47 red zone attempts, 32 of 47 for touchdowns, coach. But Jackson 48 of 49 this year in the red zone.
That's what you want. I mean, that's video game numbers. That means anytime you get down there, you're coming out with points, and you couldn't ask for anything better as a ball club. You want to score 7, but if you don't, you're at least coming away with something. And to do that at that rate, that's hats off to Coach Taylor, his staff, the kids up front, because you have everything condenses there. So you really have to be good in your assignments because all the field has shrunk. So to have that number, I didn't know it was that, man. That's big time. Hats off to them.
That's actually insane. Coach, all right, the last two
that's
questions.
That's got to be tops in the nation. That's got to be somewhere tops in the nation.
I want to say the only other team that is right there with them is North Dakota State. I think North Dakota State is like right there with them too. And also the thing with North Dakota State, coach, I think they score a touchdown on like 80% of red zone opportunities. So their red zone touchdown percent is like ignorantly high. I was trying to find the NCAA stats right here. Because while I look for this, it was the same question as last week. We did it for the SWAC championship. So Jackson State leads the nation. Montana State second. North Dakota State's up there too.
I knew that had to be.
98% for Jackson, 96% for Montana State are the top two. That is actually an insane stat. But coach, South Carolina State wins if
South Carolina State wins if Jackson turns the ball over and can't control the trenches, meaning they can't get home. That's how South Carolina State wins the game.
I'm with you on that. I think turnovers and if Jackson can't get pressure on Eric Phoenix. If you let 7 stand in the pocket all day, man, it's going to be a long day.
Yeah, you're in trouble.
You got to get him. You also got to get him to move off his spot too. If he can set his feet and just read the defense, not having to worry, that's the recipe for disaster. And that's not disrespect. Listen, at the end of the day, the only game Jackson has been in risk of losing are games that they've turned the football over.
Grambling State.
Yeah. Bama State, they turned the football over a few times and kept them in that game. That's it. And then the FAMU game, they won by 14, and they turned the ball over, what, 4 times?
And I think Fam matched them 3 of those, right?
Yeah, which helped them pull away, right? Because they scored touchdowns on those last 2. So that's
Yeah.
not disrespect. That's been the key to beat Jackson all year, is to force turnovers. That's it. And I think they have to, and also and so I also think for Jackson, coach, let's just do this. If Jackson wins, if what?
Jackson wins if they control the clock and they touch Phoenix once a possession, meaning they get pressure in his face, get him off the spot, like you just said, and like I said, control the time of possession. And 5 does what 5 does.
That's I'm with you. It's 150 to 200 rushing yards. Just let Irv do what he does, and then on the other side, defensive line wreaks havoc. You have to find a way. If you can take the deep pass away from South Carolina State, man, it changes everything.
Yep.
Because I think South Carolina State is going to be able to run the ball a little bit, coach, but they don't have. I don't know if they have an elite rushing attack, right? In
I
my
wouldn't say.
opinion,
Yeah, I wouldn't say
they're
that.
good, but they're
They
not
don't. They don't have
next level.
5. They don't have 5.
No, they don't. And I don't think that's a disrespect to what they have, because I think Adams and that rushing attack have been fine. It's just, and it's different, man. It runs through 7 on that offense. And I do think, though, they have to be somewhat balanced, coach, because the thing I am worried about, coach, with explosive offenses, you see this sometimes. If they explode early, right, and get a few touchdowns, but Jackson keeps it close, does their defense get tired? Because you're probably not winning the time of possession battle if you're getting a bunch of explosive plays. I do think they're going to have to find a way to run the ball a little bit this weekend.
And just kind of going through the roster, and you're a little bit better than I am, and really breaking this stuff down. I think Jackson has the bigger team on both sides of the ball. So if they're able to lean on them, and do what they do, like I said, and let 5 do his thing, by the 4th quarter, you have a chance to have them worn out. You know what I'm saying? And tap it out. How deep are they? Let's see. Let's lean on them. And if Jackson gets up on the clock, that's going to happen. So it's one of those deals where, like you said, it's a good matchup. One that I'm excited to see, because one team has a stronghold here, and that's the other team's opposite. It's one of those deals. So I'm excited to see the matchup.
All right, coach. The spread has, I don't know who's putting money on this game. It opened at Jackson State 3.5 is what I have here. It has now shifted all the way to South Carolina State 2 to 2.5 for the spread this weekend, which is insane. So someone is putting massive money down on South Carolina State for the odds to shift like that. But man, coach, regardless of the spread, we'll just call it a pick 'em on our show. Who you taking for the win, man? Who takes home the HBCU National Championship this weekend?
That spread is crazy. For it to swing from this to that, somebody's got some
In a week.
information. Somebody's got some inside information, man. They have
Chinnis Berry said, "Listen, man, we putting it all on the line." He got $5 from everybody on the teams. Said, "Put it in the pot."
That is crazy to me, for that to swing that way. But again, if we got to pick it, and just comparing the numbers, what one team does best compared to what the other team does best, who's hotter, if South Carolina State has stayed locked in and utilized these 3 weeks to get themselves rejuvenated, and they still have that mindset, it's them. If they just been getting by, and Jackson is still in rhythm, I think, of course, it ends up being them. But I'm going to have to go with JSU, just because I think they're the bigger team, and they've been known to impose their will upon people. So I got to go with them. It pains me. It pains me. It pains me. It pains me.
Listen, I think I think there's gonna be some Jackson fans clipping that. That's history made on the show, right there.
It
And
pains
also,
me.
too, man, I'll be so happy. And listen, I think both coaches' staffs, man, deserve to be here. But man, if that happens before I get to my prediction, what a story, right? For TC and O and that staff. Like the full 360 moment for or 180 moment for them. But I'm gonna say this, coach. I went back and forth, man, and I was finally forced to put a number on it last night with Timothy recording. So, if anyone listens to the audio already, they kind of know my pick. We did it at the very end, but I went back and forth all through the episode, man. I went from South Carolina State to Jackson. I think this game's going to be extremely competitive. I think Seven's the equalizer at quarterback. I think he's that good. The problem is I do think right now Jackson's playing at such a high level, coach, and they're going to be better at the most important positions, which is the interior defensive line. I
Right.
think their offensive line is going to be able to establish their will, and I think they're going to be able to run the football and control the game. I think it's going to be close. The score that I landed on last night, coach, and it just came to me, and I just kept thinking about it, was Jackson 27, South Carolina State 24.
Close one.
Yeah, I think it's going to be close. And I don't know if that's a field goal to break a tie. I don't know if that's Jackson scoring late to win it, but I don't know. I know there's a lot of predictions out there for a blowout. I think our guy over at FCS Stats Perform did like 34-17 South Carolina State, which seems outrageous. And then a lot of people are picking Jackson by like 3-4 touchdowns, which I think is outrageous as well. I don't think either one of these teams is unless someone just comes out and plays just unbelievable or turns the football over. I just don't see this game getting away from either team, coach.
Right. I think it'll be like I said. I think they'll be attached going in, but I just think down the stretch because it's going to be one of those where they're within reach of each other. That the leaning on the just downhill mindset. I think they just wear them out.
Yeah, I like it. Well, coach, we have a little bit of time here before I have to get out on the road. I was trying to find the tweet and I can't now, but I saw it yesterday. I want to get your opinion. One of the FAMU coaches mentioned this for a solution for the transfer portal. He said that with all the money being floated around now in college athletics, with the tampering world, that teams should have to pay buyouts for players. So let's just say Truck's graduated, so obviously Truck's not coming back. If Truck Griffin transfers from Alcorn and he goes and signs with Louisiana Monroe, Louisiana Monroe's got to pay Alcorn a set amount of money for Truck transferring to their program.
I see the point, but how are we going to track that? You know what I mean? Because nobody,
Like,
even
who
now,
does?
everybody is saying, "Oh no, nobody's tampering," and we know there's people tampering. You know what I mean? So I don't know how you track that down, and then I don't know how you set that fine. But I understand what they're saying. Ain't no doubt about it.
Yeah.
I'm with it.
I'm with it. It's just who does the evaluation, right? Because
Right.
the money's like the value's only in the eyes of whoever's going to pay it, right?
Right.
Because if me coach, if me and you were coaching at Louisiana Tech and we don't think, X player's worth $10,000, then does that affect his recruitment, right? Do we pass on him? Because not only are we going to have to pay the other school the 10,000, coach, what's he asking for in NIL?
Well, that and are we charging Monroe the same if he goes there as if he goes to Bama? Is that on the same scale?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. I just I see what they're trying to do. I see what he's
It's never
saying.
going to work.
Yeah,
It's a
I see
good
what he's
idea,
saying, but it's
yeah.
it's just
Like
too much.
there's no way to implement that, right?
Right.
Because one, and someone put in the chat, like the schools don't own the players. You would have to then sign players to a contract at a high school and set that amount predetermined. And also, too, I just don't, because you would have to bring the NCAA into this and everything. I don't trust the NCAA to make any rule
No.
and vote on it
And
for the best.
uphold it. Yeah, and uphold it. No.
Exactly. And also, too, you would have to set something different right for different levels because you would have to do a different level from, I guess, P5s paying G5s to FCS to D2.
Right. Right.
And then also, too, how many D2 players and like what happens with JUCO players? Do you have to pay the JUCO now to get JUCO players out of there? And then also, too, coach, how much does Alcorn have to pay the local D2 school? If Alcorn goes recruits a quarterback from Delta State, y'all paying $5,000 for
Nah.
that quarterback?
Nah.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like I think that's where it gets real tricky.
That, and like I said, who's going to actually admit to well, we had our GA contact Truck Griffin. We're sorry. Where do we send the $10,000 cash at? Nobody's going to admit to that. You know what I'm saying?
So in this proposition, the only school that would have to pay is the school that he signed with.
Right. And the school he signed with, they're not going to admit to that.
No. I'm with you. I don't know what the solution is, coach, and I don't think there necessarily is.
No.
Right? I really don't. And because you see someone, I mean, how do you stop the P5 from taking FCS players? I don't
you can't.
There's unless you just ban transfers, which that's never going to happen.
Swag Fan 100, what up?
Yeah, shout out to Swag Fan 100, man. Always been supporting the show. And hey, listen, I was hypothetical. He said Alcorn stay away from our QBs at Delta State. The guy's he's a Delta State guy, but I mean, Coach, I just don't think in the age of the transfer portal, there's no solution
at all, and it's only going to get worse.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know what it sucks. At the end of the day, though, I guess this is up to the FCS programs to find a way to, because there's certain programs that have done it well, right, Coach? Like you look at Mercer. How did Ty James stay at Mercer for 4 years?
Right, especially after his junior year.
Yeah, and then David Walker at Central Arkansas. I mean, you got examples of kids staying. It's just, the buyout system sounds so nice, but it's just that's never going to happen. And there's already too much money floating around. And I mean, Coach, there's kids asking like rumors out there of kids landing like $1 million deals right now. Like the kid at South Carolina, did you see that? Where
the true freshman,
true freshman, he signed the report was he signed a new deal to stay at South Carolina for a year. I don't know what I never thought we'd see that ever.
And the crazy thing about it that everybody has gotten so far away from, it was NIL, name, image, likeness, had nothing to do with collectives or anything else. And now we form collectives, and nobody's doing anything as far as NIL is concerned, so to speak. And, I say it's only going to get worse because you've got to, at our level, and I don't want to get long with it, but at our level, we've got to deal with transfers to keep up with the JSUs, the Bama States. So you've got to do it, which takes away from where we used to be able to go get a high school kid, a Felix Harper, grow him up, and then boom, his junior year, he's the guy. You know what I mean? Nowadays, we get Noah Johnson his freshman year, and Noah's running the thing, and he's the player of the year his sophomore year. We won't see Noah his junior year. It's just not going to happen. No. Because at the end of the day, you're talking about kids probably not really talking to their parents about it, Blue. All they know is some schools just called and said, or some guy just called and said, hey, hit the portal, come to Jacksonville State. We'll give you $5,000 a month for the school year. And 5 stacks every month? Yeah, I'm gone. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. Not knowing when you get there in that quarterback room where there's Lamar Jackson, there's Pat White, you're never going to play. So that next year, you're not going to be able to re-up for that $5,000 a month. So you essentially just ruined your college career for 6 months of getting $5,000 a month. And now you're right back to the same situation of trying to get somewhere else. So that cycle just continues to. So again, unless they come in and say, hey, again, we're going to get back to name, image, and likeness. As my boy Coach JB said, the toothpaste is out of the tube and you're not going to be able to put it back in.
Nope. And I'll never admit this, but like who was it? Was it the coach at Alabama A&M that took all the heat with the JUCO comment?
No, he said, come play for us, get developed, and transfer.
Yeah.
I would never say that publicly.
Yeah, publicly. But I'll say this, and this is not Coach Fred, because I got other connections, among other coaches at the G5 level too. There are more coaches buying into that than y'all think.
I'm not. Don't get that wrong.
Yeah,
chat.
that's what I'm saying. But I've talked to other coaches, and this goes for some G5 programs. I know people really jumped on him for saying that comment, Coach, but that is getting more and more closer to the majority than people think, where a lot of these G5 FCS programs are going to take the JUCO model, where their recruiting pitch to high-level kids are going to be like, come here, get that All-American, and go get the bag.
Yeah. Again, that's not, to each his own. I'm still disappointed in a few kids that left us. And then, you go back and you look at what they did this year and you're like, dude, you left to go do that? Like, for what?
Yeah, to go sit on the bench. Coach, we talked about a kid today, and he didn't transfer from Arkansas, he transferred from a Big Sky school. The kid was a 1,000-yard rusher, FCS All-American, transferred P5. Guys, he did not play a single snap this year at the P5 level.
And you were the man where you were.
All-American, 1,200-yard rusher, I think 15 touchdowns. Set the bench all year, Coach. Coach, I don't even know if he got to put his helmet on.
That makes no sense to me. And you've played your way into a NFL prospect. Let's be honest. That's what everybody wants to do. You've played your way into an NFL prospect by playing where you at, and then you go somewhere, and then you don't make the travel team. Like, that don't make sense to me.
Stupid. Just to get $5K a month.
And that's not for the rest of your college career. You know what I mean? That's a contract, and I'm all about it. But at the end of the day, you need to weigh what that's going to look like if you get there and things don't work out. Am I going to be able to keep this apartment? Am I going to be able to keep this deal or whatever? So it's just one of those deals, man. To each his own. But I think it's not going to ever go back to where it was.
Never.
To what it used to be.
The last question here, man, and then we'll end here, because this did you see the social media uproar over the Bluebloods debate?
Nah.
So
talk about us.
No, not us. Just the shout out to MD with Markham and Dave and Josh and those guys over at the HBCU Nightly Network. They were a conversation emerged because of A&T. It's all Dave's fault. We're blaming Dave here for starting this, about which HBCUs qualify as Bluebloods. And Coach, it got out of hand very, very quickly.
Wait, say that last part again.
The question was, which HBCU programs are blue blood college football programs?
Because offhand, you gotta say, and I'm gonna start where we are, where I am. You gotta say, Alcorn's a blue blood. JSU's a blue blood. Grambling, I think you've got to say, is definitely that. Southern is that. FAM is that. I think that's pretty much it for us, I would say.
Oh, with the SWAC?
Yeah.
That's fair.
Uh,
Okay, I was like, I think you missed two big ones that are
yeah, I
outside the SWAC.
SWAC, and then when you go MEAC, what they have there now, um,
Only one, I think.
here recently, yeah, and I don't know much about like their history past a few years back. I don't, and maybe you thinking about NCCU, maybe. Um, I don't know much about their history past, like I said, a couple years ago. But what's left in the MEAC, would it be Howard? Well, Howard's not in there.
South Carolina State.
Well, yeah, I guess so.
You got to
Yeah,
think. You got to think about the legendary coaches that have come through there, NFL
there
Hall of
and the
Famers.
players. Yeah, and the
Yeah, because you got to
players.
think like going all the way back throughout the history of Black college football. Like
Yeah,
South
yeah, yeah.
Carolina State was rolling at multiple points.
With along with Grambling like that. Yep.
Yeah, because
Um,
and then I also think you go out of the MEAC, Tennessee State.
I was gonna say them next.
Yeah,
Um, for me, that's it.
I now there is an argument, and I don't know because I do think it depends. Are you including all HBCU programs? Because if so, you
I
have
would
to
say
include
Division
this.
One.
Yeah, okay. If you're just doing Division 1, that's fine. Because I do think you throw Tuskegee in there if you're
Oh, you
doing
got to if
Division
we're
two.
doing
Like
that, no doubt.
Tuskegee's in the conversation if you're include. But if you're just doing Division 1, then yeah, like I'm with you there. Like I think the three obvious ones to me, like these are the non-debatable ones, is Grambling,
Right.
Jackson, and then I think Tennessee State, South Carolina State. Like those four to me, like are locks in there. But to give you a backstory, the reason that it blew up so bad is because and listen, everyone has their own opinion and everything like that. So I don't really care what everyone else thinks. This is just my list. The criteria is that there are certain programs in that list that don't have enough national titles to be in that conversation.
So let me ask you this. I'm a no. They've got two, so they consider not a blue blood program in college football.
Nope. Not according to some people's thing.
To me, when you say that, and I get, this is their
Oh,
deal.
I'm
I
not
get that.
I'm not there because like
No,
I
no,
was
no.
one of the
That's what I'm
ones
saying.
that
I get their criteria, but there's certain names to me that make you that uh, when you hear them, you know, Florida State, Miami, you immediately Grambling, you immediately um, Alcorn, you immediately, you know what I mean? Uh, to me, when you're talking blue blood type programs, but you can set your criteria to however you want to be honest, at that point. I mean, it's your list, it's what it is.
yeah. Well, because here was the argument is that when you look at HBCU national championships, FAMU with 16, Tennessee State with 16, Grambling 15, Tuskegee's got 13, Southern at 11. But then this is where it gets a little tricky. The reason I don't think you can base it strictly off of national championships is, Coach, how Hampton has 7 HBCU national championships. Jackson has 3 or 4. And I don't care how many national titles Hampton won, they're not a blue blood compared to Jackson State.
No, no, because of the name. You know what I mean? The
Yeah.
the, the name.
And also
Um,
too, I think it's more than just national titles. It's and this is only because there's never been a if there was a national title game for HBCUs, it'd be different. If everyone qualified and every
all
HBCU
levels,
was in
all
the running
levels.
for it, but the
Yeah,
fact that it was voted on by a bunch of different polls and metrics, and it's the same reason why I think national titles is a bad measure for FBS too, because up until the BCS started, bro, you would just have Coach, me and you could go into the living room and just write a list together, and they would have given someone a national title.
and submit it. Yeah,
So to me, that that disqualifies like national titles being the sole factor, right? You got to include NFL players, you got to include Hall of Famers, you got to include conference championships. I think you have to include dynasty runs
Which is why I
too.
put Alcorn in that mix. I know people probably are killing me in the chat, but that's why I put Alcorn in the mix. When you go through and you look how many first rounders they've had, how many NFLers they've had here within it, you know what I mean? Just the names, the coaches, because I think that's a big backdrop to Grambling. Coach Robinson's name, you know what I mean? I think that will always ring loud when you're talking about HBCU football. You just mentioned that name, and it automatically it snaps to something, to the point that the coach at Alabama State, when he first got the job, if you remember, people were running wild saying, "Is that his son? Is that his son? Is that his grandson?" You know, that kind of thing, just because of the name. So I think it's all in how you make your list. To me, it's all in how you make your list.
And also, too, man, I was kind of like, look, I forgot what article I was doing research for. The reason you got to include FAMU, coach, I want to say it was Jake Gaither back in like from like 45 to like 1970. They won like damn near they won the conference like every single year for almost like 20 years. It was some like ignorant stuff. Like they should have been kicked from the like I know that conference was tired of getting beat by FAMU. I mean, dude, they won like 18 titles in like 20 something years. I mean, it was something stupid. I want to say
crazy.
they won every single year from like 58 to like 69, all the years but one or something like that. I mean, it was just dumb. It was just a dumb run of dominance for FAMU. I think it was when they were in the SIAC too. So, yeah, I mean, listen, everyone can have their own list, man. And so I really don't care. But I just had to get your opinion on it because I thought it got heated, man. Like, I'll talk. You know how
And
it gets
I'll
on
never
Twitter, man.
understand that. But the more I'm in this space, as you know, people get really, really upset about things like that. And it's like, you know, your list is your list. My
Yeah.
list, you ask me your opinion, my opinion. And, you know, so that's just my opinion on it. But if we set our list, Bluebloods, the coach's corner, if we set a list, okay, this, and this, sure, you know, throw darts at it, no doubt. But it was our
Yeah.
list. Now put your list up. Let us throw darts at it as well, and we can go from there. You know, it's all in what you want on the list.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I just we just got to get back to being able to have debates without it escalating into stuff like outside the
Oh
debate.
yeah,
Like I,
yeah. You
yeah,
know, we're
like
talking about blue bloods, and now you tell me my mom's breath stink. Like, what are we talking about? I thought we were talking about football, the blue bloods, and now all of a sudden my mom breath stink. Okay, now we got to get on these hands. You know, that kind of thing.
oh
But
man, I'm
hey,
dead. I,
you know how it is, B. You know, like I said, I think I told you a long time ago, my granddad told me some advice, as he said, would take me through life, man. It's a couple things you don't ever talk about in public. That's religion, you know what I mean? Politics, all those things start wars, and telling Blue how to run his house. Uh, I think we've got to add sports to that now, because people get really edgy about that, man. Because if we bring up the Dallas Cowboys in here, everybody's going to want to tear the place down, you know? So you know, sports is the common, how do you want to put it? It brings all races, all genders. It brings everybody together, but it can be so divisive. Oh man, it can be divisive.
it's different in there, man. That's why, bro. As soon as it's like that's why I just stay out of it, bro. I see it on Twitter, and I'll have a opinion. I'm just like, nope. I just close my phone. I'm like, I'm gonna go do something. I'm gonna go stand in the yard, let my feet touch the ground for a minute, and
Oh,
regain myself.
hey,
I ain't going on there talking
I'm like
crazy.
you. A lot of times I want to give my opinion, and I'm like, you know what? This ain't even my fight.
Nope. That's why you always got to search the thread first, because there's always somebody in the thread that takes it to a spot where it's like, all right, yep, let me excuse myself here and not not get in there. But guys, man, we appreciate y'all tuning in, man. Hit the like button, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I'm hoping to see some people in the chat, some people who watch the show in Atlanta this weekend. I'm actually driving up there as soon as we get off this live show, so I'll be there. It'll be like 2 o'clock in the morning. Who knows? I don't know, but it'll be late, and I'll see everyone at the game on Saturday, man. But Coach, wasn't able to make it this year, man, but he'll be over in Frisco with me for the FCS National Championship. So hopefully we'll see you guys out there as well over in Frisco, man. But for Coach Fred, myself, the Blue Bloods FCS Football Central on SI, we'll see y'all next time. We out.